Hi, I'm Daniel Cook, and my group and I have been looking into Donald Trump's 2025 reciprocal tariff policy and how it's shaken both global markets and confidence in the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. In our view, this policy marks a turning point, not just in US trade strategy, but in how the US relates to the global economic system it helped build. The decision to impose tariffs on nearly all trading partners, regardless of their relationship with the US, is a dramatic departure from decades of American led advocacy for free trade. The market's response was instant and severe. Within 48 hours, the Dow Jones dropped 4,000 points, the worst two-day performance in history. Japan's Nikkei plunged nearly 8%, triggering trading halts. And in Australia, almost 70 billion AUD was wiped from the ASX in a single week. This wasn't just investor panic, it was a real-time reaction to the threat of a global trade fragmentation. So how do we justify such a radical protectionist move from the same country that gave us the Bretton Woods system, the IMF, the World Trade Organization, and 80 years of globalization? To understand that contradiction, we need to look at how the US has positioned itself within the global economy, not just as a participant, but as a rule setter. The US dollar became the foundation of international trade and finance. With that came a level of power and privilege no other country had. This wasn't accidental. It was designed that way. What Trump has done is challenge the assumption that the US will continue to support the system it created. Instead, he's choosing to weaponize America's central role, using trade policy as leverage while relying on the world's continued dependence on the dollar. This move has opened up deep questions. Can the global economy still function if the US stops playing by the rules? Will the rest of the world tolerate a system that works for America, but increasingly at their expense? And if the confidence in the dollar starts to erode, what comes next? These questions will shape the rest of this presentation. First, group member Tim is going to explore how the US dollar earned its status as a global reserve currency and why that status is so critical to Trump's strategy.
Thank you. My name is Tim, and I will be discussing the precursor to Donald Trump's tariff game, the Nixon shock, and whether Trump's actions will lead him to a historic victory in similar fashion. After World War II, a lot of countries were left with unpayable debt, and in order to avoid repeating the actions that led to World War II, the Bretton Woods system was implemented. This tied numerous foreign currencies to the USD, which was backed by gold, in a system of fixed exchange rates. The requirement to keep USD as reserves led America to have seigniorage over the rest of the world, profiting from their reserve requirement. A trend in the 1960s of countries converting their USD into gold led Nixon to freeze the convertibility of USD, floating the exchange rates, devaluing the dollar, and making America more competitive. Donald Trump's recent tariff war, like Nixon's actions, aimed to reshape global trade, prioritizing US interests. His goals are to force manufacturing and jobs into America by making it more difficult for foreign producers to make a profit in the US market and to achieve beneficial trade terms. The US is positioned to benefit from these tariffs due to being the global reserve currency and relied on for trade. One example of this is the petrodollar, the near exclusive use of USD in oil trade. The solidification of the USD will play a large role in the outcome of Trump's game. There are several factors which may lead to a negative outcome for America. Countries, especially in Asia, have already started negotiating trade which bypasses America entirely, or increasing domestic production. The impact of his tariffs are clearly seen in the increased interest rates, showing wavering conviction around the security of US Treasury bonds. The most important difference between the economic landscape of Nixon and Trump's plans is the degradation of US global financial dominance. Countries have more alternatives to the USD under Trump. The dominance that the US held during Nixon's term allowed him to come out on top, but the lowered reliance on the US now makes Trump's move riskier. The likely outcome of this is that Trump will win the trade war against most countries with a trade surplus, making them unprofitable. However, for America's main political opposition, such as China, they have little chance of achieving better trade terms. The cost of this victory is likely to be high, and his approval rating has already dropped.
Hi, my name is Jason. Today I'll be talking about the free trade versus protectionism of Donald Trump's tariff policy. After World War II, the US built the rules of global trade. The Bretton Woods system in 1944 made the US dollars become the world's currency. Then the GATT in 1947 cut tariffs. and later the WTO in 1995 enforced the trade rules. The system helps US business grow, but now America is turning against it. Why? In 1971, the President Nixon made a huge change. He unlinked the dollar from gold. This lets the US print more money and stay powerful. But today's tariffs are different. They don't strengthen the economy. They just protect certain industries. Is this smart or just politics? So, why is US quitting their own system? There are 3 reasons. 1. China got too strong. The WTO helped them so much, but hurts US jobs. 2. Workers demand protection, like steel and car tariffs. 3. Politicians use tariffs to win votes, even if they hurt trades. I believe the US is choosing short-term wins over the long-term leadership. But let's be honest, tariffs raise prices for Americans. The real goal isn't jobs, it's power. Blocking China's tech like chips isn't protection. It's a geopolitical fight. The risk? The world might stop trusting the US as a leader of trade anymore. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Thomas York, and I'll be speaking about the 90-day pause that President Trump recently announced following the market chaos that was sparked by his reciprocal tariffs. This pause is not a retreat, it's a strategic breather that is designed to project control. Trump is using the pause to increase pressure whilst reminding the world of a deeper truth, that America holds extraordinary power through the US dollar. The real engine that is behind Trump's trade play isn't just the tariffs, it's the US dollar itself. As the world's primary reserve currency, the dollar gives the US leverage unlike any other country. Most global trade, commodities, and financial flows are dollar denominated. By threatening global trade disruption, Trump is effectively weaponizing that dependency. The pause functions as a negotiation lever. It allows time for countries to come to the table whilst the underlying message is clear: cooperate or risk instability in a dollar-based system. Trump wants lower tariffs on US exports, foreign firms to relocate manufacturing jobs to the US, and structural trade concessions to narrow the trade deficit. This is classic Trump through his art of the deal: generate chaos and then present a deal that is shaped by US interests. If the next 90 days carry global consequences, if the tariffs are reimposed, we'd likely see a second wave of market volatility, retaliatory measures from trading partners, and a depreciation of the US dollar due to falling confidence in capital flight. Whilst a weaker dollar might boost US exports in the short term, which is what Trump is banking on, it risks a larger problem: losing trust in the US dollar as a stable store of value. If countries diversify away from the dollar, for example to euros, yuan, or gold-backed assets, the US could lose its quote exorbitant privilege, the unique ability to finance its deficits cheaply through dollar demand. Alternatively, if negotiations succeed and tariffs are dropped or reduced significantly, then the markets would likely recover. But the message remains: the US is willing to use its central role in the global financial system, not just through monetary policy, but through direct trade disruption. In summary, the 90-day pause isn't just about trade. It's a stress test for the dollar's dominance. Trump is gambling that the world is too reliant on the US dollar to resist. But if that gamble fails, he may be accelerating a shift away from the very foundation of America's financial power, and that is the strength of the dollar itself.
Hi, I'm Sabina, and I'll be wrapping up our discussion with a final evaluation of the policy and asking the big question: is the US dollar's dominance in danger? Let's start with the core economic claim. Can tariffs reduce US national debt? The short answer is not really. Even if reciprocal tariffs bring in additional revenue, it's nowhere near enough to offset a national debt of $36.2 trillion. Tariffs might raise billions, but the US is spending trillions annually on defense, entitlements, and interest payments. At best, tariffs are a political tool, not a fiscal solution. Now, here's the bigger risk and question. Could this trigger a global recession or even a new Great Depression? We've already seen market panic, supply chain shocks, and collapsing investor confidence, all from the announcement alone. If tariffs escalate and retaliation deepens, especially from China or the EU, we could face severe trade contraction. Combined with high debt and interest rates, this could tip the global economy into a recession. Or worse. That leads to the most critical point: de-dollarization. If other countries start to feel the US is using the dollar to pressure or control them instead of providing stability, they'll start looking for other options. And that's already happening. Some countries are now trading using Chinese yuan, euros, or even gold-based currencies. If more countries follow this path, the US could lose its special status as the world's main currency, which will make it more expensive for America to borrow money and reduce its power in global decisions. Trump's tariff strategy is bold, maybe even brilliant, as a short-term leverage, but it's also a dangerous gamble. He's using America's great economic asset, the US dollar, as both a shield and a sword. If the world pushes back, this could go down as one of the most costly miscalculations in modern economic history. So, to wrap it up, we ask, is it a masterstroke or economic sabotage? That depends entirely on what happens next, but the stakes couldn't be any higher.